Have you ever been there? That really frustrating place where you're trying to learn something new. Maybe it's, I don't know, coding or a musical instrument or like we're talking about today, language.
Yeah.
And you just hit this wall. You can't seem to break through it. You've done all the usual things, right?
Yeah.
You read the books, maybe even taking classes, but the knowledge just feels kind of stuck. It's like it's in there somewhere, but you can't quite grab it when you need it, especially out in the real world. That disconnect, theory versus actually doing it, yeah, it can be really disheartening.
Oh, absolutely. That feeling is so incredibly common, hitting that wall where what you know doesn't translate into what you can do. And you see it all the time with language learning. Specifically, we encounter learners who, they can ace the grammar test, no problem. But then you put them in a real conversation and they just freeze. Can't get a sentence out.
Right. That gap.
Exactly. That gap between the structured classroom stuff and, well, fluid, spontaneous talk. And what's so fascinating about the story we're digging into today is how it really pins down that gap and then finds a way across it. It goes way beyond just memorizing rules. It really zeroes in on what actually works, when you
Yeah.
just need to connect with someone.
Okay, so let's really dive into that initial struggle first. Let's try and paint a picture of what this person's English was actually like before everything changed. Imagine being in an English conversation class. The source material describes it so well. Sitting there, this nervous smile, nodding along.
Pretending you're following everything.
Totally. Doing your best impression of understanding, but really, you're catching maybe, every third word?
Yeah.
If you're lucky, it's like,
Er.
The source says it felt like an old radio with bad reception. That's such a great image.
Yeah. Static.
Exactly. Words just turning into static. Maybe a word here or there comes through clear, but mostly just noise. It's not just annoying. It's like this constant mental fog, right? Always struggling to grasp what's being said. I think anyone who's learned anything complex can relate to that feeling.
Definitely. That feeling of the information just not quite landing.
And they describe their English specifically as patchy. That word feels really important. We use it for things that are uneven, inconsistent, right? And that fits perfectly here. It wasn't like they knew no English.
No, not all.
It was just unreliable. Like you said, inconsistent. So, for example, they could say, hello, how are you? Without any trouble. Textbook perfect. But then this is the key part. If the answer came at too fast or wasn't exactly what they expected,
Freeze. Blank screen.
total freeze. Mind goes blank. Conversation dead in the water. It really highlights that huge gap between, memorized phrases, those neat, predictable lines from a book, and the complete chaos of a real conversation.
Yeah, the real thing is messy.
The source compares it to chasing a moving train. I love that.
Yeah.
By the time you've processed sentence one, the conversation's already 3 stops down the line.
Right, you're always behind, always catching up. It's exhausting.
And we need to be clear, this wasn't because they were lazy or didn't try. No, this was after years of the traditional stuff. Grammar drills, those endless irregular verb lists.
Oh, the verb lists.
Reading those stilted textbook dialogues. Mary goes to the market, always perfectly spoken. But all that knowledge, all those rules, it just lived only on paper. That's how they put it.
Confined to the page.
Exactly. Theoretical, academic, spoken English, the kind that just flows naturally when you're talking. That felt like, a completely different language. It's a big realization, isn't it, that the classroom rules don't always map directly onto how people actually talk.
It's a huge realization, and it points straight to what we often call the classroom English problem. There's a real cognitive reason why learning only from textbooks often fails when you hit the real world. Take that example of using generic words. The source mentions using thing for everything, right?
Yeah. Can you give me that thing, or the power thing
Yeah.
is not working?
Right. When they actually mean remote control or battery. And it's not just about vocabulary size. It's a sign of the brain struggling. When you keep defaulting to placeholders like thing, It really affects how confident you sound, how fluent people perceive you to be.
And how you feel yourself, probably.
Absolutely. It just slows everything down, makes communication clunky. You feel less capable than you might actually be on paper. It's this constant mental detour.
Okay, so that's one aspect. What else contributes to this classroom English failing in practice?
Well, then there's the big one, listening comprehension, especially when native speakers are just talking naturally to each other. Fast. The source says the words feel glued together.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
what you're doing
Yeah.
instead of what are you doing?
Exactly. Or gonna for going to, want to for want to. All those natural reductions and connections. If your brain's only been trained on clear, separate words, like in a textbook recording, this fast, connected speech is incredibly hard to process. It's like trying to read without spaces between words.
Okay, I can see that. It just sounds like one long blur.
It does. Your brain hasn't learned the patterns of those connected sounds, so it just can't decode the message fast enough. And that leads straight back to that freezing we talked about.
Right, because you literally can't understand what's being said quickly enough to respond.
Precisely. And this struggle to listen then feeds into another issue the source mentions, the grammar collapse. So, on paper, maybe they know the grammar rules fine. They can pick the right tense in a worksheet. But in a real conversation, under pressure, that knowledge just sort of evaporates.
Like starting a sentence in the past tense and accidentally switching to the present. Yesterday, I go.
Exactly that kind of thing. Yesterday, I go to the store and I buy. It's super common. And it's not because they don't know the rule, it's cognitive overload. Your brain is just trying to survive the sentence, get the main words out. The finer points of grammar, they often get pushed aside.
Survival mode takes over.
Yeah. Communication first, perfect grammar second, which is natural, but it really shows that gap between knowing a rule consciously and using it automatically.
What's also really striking is how this wasn't just about language skills, was it? It went deeper. It affected their confidence, their interactions.
Hugely. The source is very open about avoiding conversations with native speakers whenever possible, not because they weren't interested, but because of that paralyzing fear of the awkward silence.
Yes. That silence that feels like it lasts forever.
And feels loaded with judgment. The fear wasn't just making a mistake, it was imagining the other person thinking, wow, this person's English is terrible. That fear of being judged, of failing, it just shut down any attempt to practice in the real world.
So it wasn't just a language problem. It was a confidence problem, too, tied together.
Absolutely intertwined. The language difficulties fed the lack of confidence, and the lack of confidence prevented the practice needed to improve the language. It's a vicious cycle. So when we look at this whole picture, it's clear their English wasn't inherently bad. It was just trapped in that box of classroom learning, full of theory, but lacking that practical, dynamic application.
The box needed breaking.
Completely. The realization was to get truly fluent, that whole way of thinking, that whole approach had to be shattered. They needed something fundamentally different, not just more study, but a new way of engaging with the language.
That idea of breaking the box is really powerful, isn't it? Rethinking everything. And the aha moment, the turning point for this person is fascinating because it wasn't planned, it wasn't in a class, it was accidental.
Often the way, isn't it? Those unexpected insights.
Totally. So the scene is simple. Just watching a TV series in English one evening. Not studying, just relaxing. Subtitles were on in their native language, the usual way. Then, just on a whim, really, this tiny decision, as they call it. Switch the subtitle to English.
Okay. Simple change.
Simple change, huge impact. Because suddenly, for the first time, they could actually connect the sounds I was hearing to the words I was seeing. Simultaneously. Imagine that. The sound hitting your ear, the word appearing on screen, and click, they match up instantly.
Wow, yeah. That real-time connection must have been powerful.
It led to this immediate big realization. English on the page was not the same as English in real life. It wasn't just slightly different. It was fundamentally different. People on TV weren't talking in perfect text-based sentences. They were, cutting words, merging sounds, using rhythms and tones that carried so much meaning, and using expressions they'd never seen in any textbook.
The real living language.
Exactly. Raw, unfiltered. And that's where the learning really started to shift. There's a great specific example in the source. The phrase, "I'm beat." Imagine seeing a character slump onto a couch, totally exhausted, and say, "Man, I'm beat."
Okay, yeah. Context is clear.
Right. From the context, the visual, the character's state, it was obvious it didn't mean physically hitting something. Later, they confirmed it means, "I'm very tired." But they understood it first from the situation, not from a dictionary, not from a grammar rule.
Learned entirely through context. That's key.
And that one phrase kind of crystallized it all. If you only learn from lists and rules, you miss all these rich, common, everyday expressions. It wasn't just about learning that one phrase. It unlocked a whole new way of seeing and hearing the language.
That's a perfect illustration of learning in context. And what happened next was crucial. They started actively looking for these things, identifying patterns. It wasn't just passive watching anymore. They started collecting these expressions, writing them down. Things like,
No big deal.
yeah, no big deal, meaning it's not a problem. Or, hang on, wait a moment, spilled the beans. For reveal a secret. These weren't random words. They were the actual building blocks of conversation. The bits traditional learning often misses. The stuff that makes speech sound natural.
The missing pieces of the puzzle.
Exactly. The puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
And this new approach felt different, didn't it?
Yeah, the source says it didn't feel like homework. That's
Yeah.
huge. It felt like unlocking a secret language.
And that feeling is incredibly motivating. When you learn something because it's tied to a real situation, a story, an emotion, it sticks so much better. Your brain is just wired to remember meaningful, connected things, not abstract facts in isolation. It changes learning from a chore into, well, an engaging exploration, more like play almost.
Right. Curiosity takes over.
Precisely. And this leads to that really critical realization we touched on. It wasn't about learning more rules. It was about learning the right patterns. That shift is subtle but massive. Stop layering on more complex grammar you can't use anyway.
And focus instead on how people actually talk.
Yes. Focus on the high-frequency patterns, the common chunks of language that native speakers use without thinking. Knowing all the irregular verbs is one thing. But recognizing how they're used in common phrases and learning those phrases as whole units, that's a much faster path to actually speaking fluently.
So pattern recognition over rule memorization.
In terms of practical fluency, absolutely. Once that focus shifted, everything changed. This wasn't just about adding vocabulary, it was the foundation for a whole new way of practicing that transformed their speaking in just months. Understanding the real rules of the game, not just the textbook ones.
Okay, so that realization is the foundation. What did the actual practice system look like? The source says it wasn't complicated, but it was consistent.
Consistency, that's the magic word, isn't it? Doing it regularly, even in small bursts. That's what builds momentum.
Right. So technique number 1, shadowing. Can you break that down?
Sure. Shadowing is basically like being an echo. You listen to a native speaker, maybe from a short TV clip or a YouTube video, something manageable, and you repeat what they say almost immediately.
Right as they say it.
Yeah, just slightly behind them, like
Yeah.
a shadow. And the source mentions, it felt clumsy at first. Lots of mistakes.
Which is fine, right?
That's
That wasn't the goal.
Exactly. The goal wasn't instant perfection. It was about training my mouth and ears to work together, getting the input and output systems synced up. You're listening, processing, and speaking all at once. It's quite demanding cognitively.
And the surprising benefit they mentioned.
Copying the rhythm and intonation, the musicality of the language almost automatically, without even thinking about it. And that's huge for sounding natural in English. Intonation carries so much meaning, so much emotion. Shadowing helps internalize that music.
Okay, so shadowing is technique 1. What was 2? Technique 2 was their personal 3 new phrases rule, very specific. The key was learn 3 new phrases they had actually heard that day, not from a list, but from real life, real media.
Anchored in authentic use.
Mhm.
Smart.
Yeah. So if they heard someone say, that's a good call, meaning that's a smart decision, or maybe I'll pass, for I don't want to do that, those were the targets.
Yeah.
And limiting it to just 3.
Mm-hmm.
Why was that important?
It prevents overwhelm, right? 3 is manageable. You can actually focus on them, remember them, and crucially, try to use them. It ensures they become part of your active vocabulary, not just passive knowledge that fades away. It builds that sense of achievable daily progress.
Makes sense. Small, consistent wins.
Exactly. Which brings us to technique 3, which sounds maybe a bit odd at first, talking to myself.
Yeah. Talking out loud in English when you're alone.
It sounds strange, but it's incredibly powerful. The idea is to narrate your thoughts or actions in English. And if you hit something you don't know how to say, you don't just skip it, you stop, you look it up.
Find the phrase you need.
Right. And then you repeat it out loud over and over until it feels natural, until it flows. This is all about building muscle memory for speech.
Muscle memory for your mouth.
Essentially, yes. Training your tongue, lips, vocal cords to make the sounds automatically without conscious effort, like learning chords on a guitar. It frees up your brain to focus on what you want to say, not how to physically produce the sounds. Turns effort into automaticity.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Huh.
And the final technique involved a big mental shift,
Yeah,
right?
huge shift. Technique
Okay.
4, context over translation. This meant consciously stopping that habit of mentally translating every single word back into their native language.
Which is what most learners do, instinctively.
It is, but it's a major bottleneck. Instead, they focused on guessing the meaning of new words from the context, using the surrounding words, the situation, the tone, all the clues to figure it out.
Why is that so much better?
Because it forces your brain to think directly in English, to build connections within English, between concepts and words. That constant back and forth translation slows you down massively. It's like having a slow interpreter running in your head all the time. Learning from context builds direct pathways, makes processing faster, makes conversation feel less like mental gymnastics.
Building the direct highway, not the scenic route with tolls.
Exactly. So you take these 4 techniques, shadowing, 3 phrases, talking to myself, context over translation, and the real magic ingredient was doing them consistently. The source stresses every single day, even for 15 minutes.
Just 15 minutes, that seems almost too little.
But it adds up. Small, focused, daily effort is way more effective than occasional marathon sessions you can't sustain. And the results? Smoother sentences, richer vocabulary, much higher confidence. They moved from consciously translating my thoughts to just speaking. That's the breakthrough.
Wow. That's the goal, isn't it?
It really is. And the lesson is powerful. You don't need a million complicated methods, just a few simple ones you actually use consistently. That's the engine of real change.
Okay, so they've got this system, they're doing it consistently. But the speed of the results was surprising, wasn't it? We usually think language learning takes ages.
That's the really striking part. The source says noticeable changes happen within just a few weeks, not months. Weeks. Conversations that used to feel like running through mud, that horrible, sticky, effortful feeling started to flow.
Flow. Smoothly, easily.
Yeah, without those constant stops and starts, like the gears finally meshing.
And what were the concrete signs of this?
Being able to follow TV shows without subtitles most of the time, that's a huge leap in comprehension. Imagine the freedom in that. Actually enjoying the show, not constantly deciphering, and in conversations, less freezing up. The brain was finally fast enough to catch the words as they came.
Keeping up with the speed of native speech?
Mostly, yeah. Not perfectly, maybe not understanding every single word, but understanding enough to stay in the conversation, to respond, to participate. That static was clearing, the signals getting stronger. It was real, tangible proof the methods were working.
So why did it work so fast? What was happening under the hood, so to speak?
A lot of it comes down to that massive improvement in listening comprehension. Techniques like shadowing directly train their ears to recognize connected speech, those glued together sounds.
Like, what do you want to do?
Exactly. What used to sound like one mystery word started breaking down into understandable parts. The brain learned the patterns of natural reductions and connections. That ability to decode fast, natural speech in real time is absolutely fundamental for fluency. Without it, conversation is just incredibly difficult.
Makes sense. You can't
Sure.
respond if you can't understand.
Precisely. And then there's the confidence boost.
Yeah.
That was enormous. Remember how they used to speak quietly, afraid of mistakes?
Yeah.
Now they started speaking louder and more naturally, and crucially, they kept going, even if I still made errors. That's a huge mental shift, moving away from chasing impossible perfection.
And towards actual connection.
Exactly. Connection, getting your message across, understanding other, that's the real point of language, isn't it? Letting go of the fear of mistakes frees you up to actually communicate, to practice more, which leads to faster improvement. It becomes a positive cycle.
Okay, so better listening, more confidence.
Mhm.
Was there a specific moment that really hammered home the progress?
There was what the source calls the most shocking moment,
Yeah.
an unsolicited compliment from a native speaker. Someone just casually said, "Wow, your English sounds so natural."
Wow, after all that struggle, that must have felt amazing.
Incredible validation, right? Years of feeling inadequate, then someone spontaneously tells you sound natural. The source describes it perfectly as fuel, not just a nice comment, but real energy, real motivation to keep going, keep practicing, keep improving.
That external validation confirming the internal changes. Powerful stuff.
Absolutely. So, the big picture reason why it worked so fast. Because they were learning the way the brain likes to learn, through real patterns, through repetition, through meaningful use, not abstract rules in a vacuum. It was about, as the source says, living the language a little bit every day.
Active engagement, not passive study.
Exactly. That consistent, active engagement builds and strengthens those neural pathways for the language. It leverages neuroplasticity. And that's why we're confident saying that anyone, regardless of where they start, can make faster progress than they think is possible. Just focus on real English in real situations every single day. Be a participant.
It really is an incredible turnaround. Thinking back to where this person started avoiding conversations, freezing up and comparing it to where they ended up.
Sarah?
Fluent, confident, natural sounding. It's almost like two different people.
It is a profound transformation.
And it didn't come from a magic pill or some secret method. It came from that shift in approach,
Right.
paying attention to real language, practicing consistently.
And being brave enough to be imperfect while learning.
Yes, being willing to sound awkward, make mistakes. That seems crucial. So there's one core message to take away from this whole deep dive. It feels like it's that line from the source. Fluency is not a talent you were born with, it's a skill you build.
Such an important point. It's not magic, it's construction.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And like any skill, playing music, sports, anything complex, the more you use it, the stronger it gets. It becomes automatic. And the impact of small, consistent effort is just huge. That idea that even 10, 15 minutes of focused, real-world English practice every day can transform your speaking and listening faster than you imagine.
It's not about the hours logged in one sitting. It's about the consistency of showing up.
Every day.
Which leads us to a challenge, really. A challenge for you listening right now. Don't wait for that mythical, perfect moment to start. It's never coming.
Right. There's always something else.
Always. So start with what you have today. Pick one thing from what we talked about. Maybe watch that short English clip and shadow it just for 5 minutes. Or listen actively today and grab 3 phrases you hear people actually use. Write them down.
Or just talk to yourself out loud in English while you're making coffee.
Exactly. Keep that notebook handy for expressions. These are tiny steps. Manageable, but these tiny steps, done consistently, they will absolutely do more for your fluency or any skill than years of just passively thinking about it. It's about active engagement.
Active, real world, consistent.
Yes. And here's maybe a final thought to chew on. Where else in your life are you stuck in that classroom English mindset? Where are you learning the theory, reading the books, but not actually doing the thing in its real messy context?
That's a really interesting question. Learning about leadership but not leading.
Or fitness, but not moving? Creativity, but not creating? How could applying these ideas, context, patterns, small, consistent practice help you break the box in that area of your life?
That's definitely something to think about.
And just quickly, remember the vocabulary we unpacked? Patchy for inconsistent, awkward silence, context, the situation giving meaning. Fuel for motivation. Try using them today. Vocabulary only sticks when you use it. Make it your own.
Make it active.
Yeah. Make it active. Because ultimately, you don't have to speak perfectly to speak powerfully. You just have to start and keep going.